Okay, so hey guys, today we are going to be working on arrays. As you can see, this is the code which you need when you are starting within a C++ program. So I've already written it out. We're going to start with arrays today. You might know what arrays are. Arrays is a data type where you can assume array makes sections of data or boxes of data in which you can store your own data in one line. Like, what I mean is, if I make an integer array, first let me make an integer variable. Like I say, integer num1 equals to 4. So I've made a variable with the value of 4. Now I'm going to make this into an array. I'm going to write array, or whatever name you want to name your array. I'm going to say array of numbers, and I'm going to put this bracket. In this bracket you're going to write how many terms do you want in your array. I'm going to write 4 as I want 4 terms in my array. Now this is how you define an array in C++. Suppose if you want to add values in your array, I'm going to put some random values 1, 2, 3, 4. If you see, I have added 4 values in my array of numbers which can store 4 maximum values. This is known as an array. It can store a number of values of the type it is declared. Now you can see I have stored 1, 2, 3, 4. I have stored 4 values in my array. Arrays are also known as list in different languages. It is a list of data. Suppose now I make a array, string array of names, value 4, or let's keep it 3. Now I can store 3 values in this. Suppose Ali, Ahmed, and my own name, Zafir. Now if you see, this array can store 3 names. It actually cannot store 3 names, it can store 3 strings. Now the string can have any sentence in it. This array doesn't care. The only limit it has that it should be 3. Now if you run this code, you are not going to find any errors. It's totally fine. Now let's comment off the string array for a little while. Let's come back to the number array. Now if I want to see out my number array, I want to see out this number 1. I cannot directly see out it. I need to find the address. Now addressing in arrays is pretty simple. Arrays start from the number 0, meaning 1 is stored at the 0th position of array of numbers. The value 2 is stored at the first position of array of numbers, because this is at 0, this will be at the first position, this will be at the second position, and this will be at the third position. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3. Now what do I mean by address? To see out the first value, I would need to write array of numbers, and I'm going to put the bracket, and I'm going to write 1, and I'm going to write 0. This is going to output 1. As I've told you, at address 0 we have the number 1, because arrays start from 0. Now if I run this and I show you, I get the output of 1. Similarly, if I now put over here 2, 0, 1, 2, now I'm going to get the value of 3. As you can see, I've got the value of 3. Now that's all cool, but what if I want to output the whole array together? Can I directly write array of numbers? If I run this, I'm going to get some weird value. This weird value actually represents the first index of the array, the address of the array. What this is outputting? This is outputting the memory address of where my array is saved on my RAM. This is a concept which we will see more in pointers, as pointers work more with addresses. But right now the cout which you just saw was actually the address of where my array was stored in my RAM. Let's not go over there. Now how do I output this array if I wanted all of these numbers on my console? So for this you will be using a loop to output each number. So now we are going to loop through the array, we are going to go to each number, and then we are going to output it. So हम इसको output करने के लिए we are going to use the for loop. A for loop का syntax मैंने आपको बताया था. It is going to be for int I equals to 0, I is less than 4, I plus plus. The reason हमने 4 यहाँ use किया, the reason we have used 4 is because our array stops at 4. It only has 4 terms, so we won't loop extra loops. We are only going to stop till 4, until where our array ends. Now we are going to see out the array of numbers, but we, in our brackets, what are we going to write? We are going to write I. Now what does the I mean? If you see closely, the I is in our for loop. Our I starts from 0, right? So in the first loop we are going to get a 0 in this. An array of numbers 0 index is going to be outputted at 1, which is 1. In the next loop our I will increment, and our I will become 1. So let me write over here, in the first loop we will have I 0. In our second loop our I will become 1, because that's what for loops do. It increments the value in its bracket. So in the next loop over here we will get I1. Then in the next loop we will get I2, and in the last loop we are going to get I3, because once we get I4 the for loop will stop, as the value will exceed this statement. I won't remain less than 4, it will become equal to 4, so our for loop will break. So in 3 loops our I value will change from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3, and we are going to use that I value in our cout. Let's now run this, and if you see, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, our whole array outputted. If you want to add gaps in your cout, you can add a further less than sign, and you can add this space with the speech marks. And now if you see, we are gonna get spaces in our array. So this is how you output an array in C++. If you want, you may use the while loop if you want to use that, but over here this is the limit. If you have a bigger array, let's say, or a smaller array of 3 terms or maybe 10 terms, you gotta change the for loop over here. If I run this for loop till only 3 and not 4, and if you see the output, the 4 is missing because our loop ends before I reaches 3. So make sure to keep this number as same as the array limit you have. Now let's comment this off, and let's come to the string array. You can have a task to output this string array using the for loop yourself. I'm going to do it here once more. For int I equals to 0, I is less than 3 now, because our loop is 3, because our array's limit is 3, and then we are going to write inside the for loop cout. This time the name of the array is names, and in the bracket we are going to put in I. Let's now run this, and you can now see we get Ali, Ahmed and Zafir. If you want it in new lines, you can add ANDL at the end of your cout statement, and this way you're going to have your outputs in 3 different lines. ठीक है? Now coming to something new. We are going to make an array of float, which means an array which accepts decimal values. And we're going to write it data. We're going to name it data. And it can hold 3 values. If you can see, I have declared the array, but I have not added any data to it, because we are going to separately add the data in this array. To add data in an array on a fixed index, suppose I want to put data on the first index of this array. What I'm going to write is data 0, which is going to be the very first term of the array, equals to 2.5. Keep in mind, this is correct, but if you write it 2.5 equals to data 0, this is going to be wrong. This is wrong. Why? Because it is a rule in coding, it is a rule of C++2 that data is added, data is overwritten in the term on the left, meaning data 0 is on the left. So whatever value data 0 might have, it may have some garbage value. It may have 14549, any value it could have. What's going to happen is this 2.5 is going to replace the value in data 0, because data 0 is on the left. So whatever is on the left, it is going to store the value that is on the right. This might look very obvious right now, but once we move forward and we add values from one variable to another variable, it might get a little confusing. So keep this in mind. The term on the left will always receive the value, and whatever value it already has, it is going to overwrite. तो जो left वाली value है, उसमें आप value overwrite कर देंगे. Right? So I have written data 0 in 2.5. Now I want the first term to be 3, and then I want our data 2 value to be 4. If you can see, this is where our array is filled up, because it can only store 3 values. So 0, 1, 2 are the 3 values. Let me put in a for loop of 3, and let me output and show you the values of this array. So we are going to do cout data I and with a space, so that's easier to read. Let me put in some decimal values, 3.2 and 4.1, because it is a float array. If you can see, the values are successfully stored in our array. Now what if I tell you that I don't want the values to be hard coded? This is known as hard coding, because we have given the values ourselves. हमने खुद से values इसमें डाल दी हैं. So what are we going to do? We are going to we are now going to take input from the user, and then we are going to store it in the array. So for that, we are going to use another for loop, right, of 3 again. And what we are going to do is, first we are going to take an input. We are going to write cin and greater than sign. For cout it's different, for cin it's different. First we are going to write a cout statement, enter value, like this. And then we are going to cin into a variable. Let's name the variable temp. We have not declared the variable temp anywhere in the code. So when we run it, we are going to have an issue. It says temp was not declared in this code. What is temp? So let's go anywhere in the code, and we are going to write float temp. Now we have declared temp as a float variable which can have decimal values. So now what is happening is, this code is going to run 3 times in this loop. Every time it is going to see out enter value, and we are going to see in value. It is going to stop and wait for the user to put in a value. I'm going to show you this in a minute. But the thing is, whatever we are taking as input, it is not saving in the array right now. So let's solve this and let's store it in the array. We are going to write data I equals to temp. So if you see this data array at the ith position, meaning when the loop runs for the first time, when I is 0, this is going to have the value of 0, and we are going to store the value at the 0th position. Then we are going to store the value at the first position, and then at the second, and then the for loop is going to end. Keep in mind, this is where what I was explaining comes into play. The value of temp is going to copy itself in data I. So whatever value was initially in this array at data position I, it is going to overwrite. Keep in mind, if I wrote temp equals to data I, this is going to be wrong. This is going to be a logic error, meaning the code will run, but what will happen is the value at data I is going to be stored in temp. Though that's what we not need. We need the value of temp to go into data I. So hence the first one is correct. As I have told you, the value, the variable at the left takes in the value, right? So we're going to put data I on the left, as we want that to take in the value. Now if we run this, if you see, it has asked for its value and all the code has stopped. Now it's waiting for the user input. I'm going to put 1.1. Now it's asked for the second value. I put 5.6, and it asks for the third value, and I put in 8.9. As you can see, it also outputs the value, as the second for loop is there for the outputting of value, right? So this was how you can input into an array, how you can output an array, and I showed you different aspects to array handling. This was basic array handling which we have done today, and see you in the next class, where we take this into one more step forward.